doing pretty good.
Thanks for taking time to do this. I'm sorry that I had to schedule all Whopper Jod. It's my day off, which means I should have tons of time.
No, that doesn't mean that. You're an adult.
Yeah. So I'm like, so a tree fell in the back, and I'm like chainsawing it. The chainsaw goes out, and I'm like running down to Lowe's. I'm like, I don't know how you are, but I'm like, okay, you're not gonna replace this. I don't have time to fix this. I'll fix it, but I'm buying another chainsaw right now because I'm gonna get this tree out of the way today, and I'll deal with this other thing later.
Yep.
Not that I'm balling like that, but it's under warranty still. It'll work out. But today I want to get it fixed. So anyway, so I'm like all sweaty, and then I saw hey, take your time. So I jumped in the shower. I'm like, perfect. I don't have to come in looking like a hot mess. I can take a shower. And then you're like, Central Time. I had all kinds of time.
Like, I scheduled a birthday party for one of my kids that was to take place in Tennessee, but I scheduled it while in Georgia.
Yeah.
And it put the wrong time. So here I am thinking that I haven't, and mine worked the opposite way. Like, I thought people were going to show up at 2 and they start showing up at 1. And I'm like, what are you guys doing here?
This is like more than just being timely. This is what are you doing? Yeah, no, I actually, when we scheduled it, I'm like, yeah, I even put in my little thing, Central Time, whatever. But when I was looking at my phone, I'm like, oh crap, I don't have very much time to get back home. This is when I started texting you, and then I'm like, I just, speaking of getting old, these are the things that happen. We process differently. So are you cool to jump into questions? Can we? You got a bug on your hat? I don't know. That's a nice fly. I don't care about flies, but some people do.
We've got these weird, massive flies that have come in.
It's giant.
They're I thought that somebody was pranking me because it was sitting on a certificate in front of my desk, and I'm like, who put this here? And then it moved. I'm like, oh God, that's real. Like, okay, now who's going to take it away for me? Because I don't like bugs.
No. Again, thank you. No, bugs are, they're part of the whole thing, I guess. But
yeah.
So thank you again for doing this. For sure, it'll be on my YouTube channel. I'm not sure what else we'll do with it, but I'm trying to get that back up and going. I don't know. I've been working on that for a while. It got kind of filtered, and I kind of got like, well, what's the point then? And then I started to think about it. I'm like, well, the point is still for me and my community, and it's starting to slowly but surely I turn the tide, and I can put it some other places. So anyway, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. And I saw that you got a new house. I think we've already talked in person since then, but the folks out there that watch this might not have. So tell me about that. How's that going?
So we recently, when we first moved to Tennessee, when my husband got out of the Army, we got the first thing that was available because there wasn't a whole lot even back then in 2016. But we've been living in a 900 square foot house now for a couple of years. And back when me and him were the only ones that needed to use the one bathroom in the house, it was great. But now we've got 3 kids, 2 adults, a dog, and a lizard.
Yeah.
so we needed more space. And actually the house belonged to one of our alumni's mother-in-laws. So it made it being their house is the only reason the deal went through. We had a lot of issues. But we got in there and had our first hosting event, I guess, this weekend.
Nice.
We had a couple of people staying with us during surgical speed shooting.
Okay, cool.
And invited everybody over for dinner after class. And it was it made my heart so happy. I don't know if you watched the video that I did Friday, the tribe video.
Not yet. I will though.
Okay. But I say in there, one of the reasons that we bought a house big enough to do things was because I wanted to be able to follow in my dad's footsteps and open my home up to my tribe and my family. Yeah. And getting to see that in motion, I was nearly in tears this weekend. It was incredible.
That's cool. It sounds like you're hitting the ground running. It's not been very long since you moved in. I think
we don't have all of our stuff there yet.
You're doing a painting party and you're already That's awesome. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly how we roll as well. It feels like we always have people in our house, and there's a equilibrium, a balance to be found with that. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you're like, holy cow, I know that y'all are coming over, but this is still our house. You
Yes.
can't just always show up, like, I mean, you can if there's a need, but you can't just, hey, like
And
there's,
I think that's the trick, is finding people who are going to be respectful of the
that's right.
fact that it's still your home and you're
Mm-hmm.
just opening it up to them because of like you
That's right.
want that camaraderie and tribe.
It's the tribe. It's the right people that know
Yeah.
where you live.
Yes.
So I'm just gonna jump right in if it's cool. What did you think, since you're already talking about kind of extending um the culture that you grew up in, the legacy that your dad has built, and all these things, what did you think was silly growing up with your parents that now you kind of appreciate? Like when you were a kid, what were you like, holy cow, I am totally rebelling against this, but now you're down with?
Like my parents didn't give me that much to rebel against.
Okay, cool.
Um,
Silly, whatever
we
word you want to use.
we had like a freedom versus responsibility thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I'm going to give you this freedom, and as long as you're responsible with it, we can keep compounding on that.
Right.
But when you stop being responsible with it, that's when like it'll get pulled back. But freedom has, and like as a patriot and as a teen girl, freedom was always super important to me.
Yeah.
So I stayed responsible. So it was different when we first started having people come to the house, because when we first started hosting people and sharing our home with them, we lived in a very small house in Big Sandy, Tennessee.
Okay.
So when people would come over, there wasn't a team room, there was our living room.
Right.
And I guess the weirdest thing was like the first time I ever brought a boy home, like he walked me home from trick-or-treating. We were like 12.
Yeah.
And when we walked in, he was like, all the guys there, because there was like military guys there taking a class, and they're like, what are your intentions with Jaeger's daughter? He's like, dude, we're 12. I don't even know what intentions are.
I don't even know what my intentions for me.
Right. So that was probably the silliest thing, was like, you had to get used to it.
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
there's a lot more people who want a say in what goes on in your life than if you don't have that.
Did you always have that mindset that, like, were there any of the things that you now think are useful that you thought, well, why are we making such a big deal about this? Maybe it was tourniquets, maybe it was like, was there ever anything that you're like, holy cow, or were you always bought in? It's because as a kid, you know what I mean?
So the hardest thing for me to grasp as a kid was like, we grew up poor and I didn't know it.
Okay.
But my dad says, like, when you're poor, you can't.
The cop years?
Yeah, the cop years.
Yeah.
He was like, you can't afford to buy things twice when you're poor. So you've got to buy the good thing first.
Right.
And especially like when I first got my own place, because I moved out as soon as I turned 18. Again, freedom was always a huge thing. And I'm like, I can't afford that thing. This will do for now. So that took a little bit of time for me to get it.
Sure.
And like once I started, I was like, okay, I get what they mean when this thing had to be replaced every so often. So that was probably the hardest thing to buy into. But like now with a family of my own, I'm like, oh no, that's the way to go.
Sure. Yeah.
But
no,
all of
100%.
the training and the mindset, like I was in it from the get-go. Like I joke when people come here and they're like, I have adapted to that, and I give the Bane quote, like, I was born into the darkness, you've merely adapted to it. Like I was born into this. Yeah. And it's always just been like, this is the way. So that's
legitimately.
Yeah.
That's cool. And I think you're a parent, you know this. I think all parents probably, I mean, that's really cool to hear, because most of us are trying to teach our kids something that they're pretty resistant to. So it's really cool to hear, some kids are resistant, but they come around, and some kids are like you were, kind of like pretty excited, like gung ho, let's do this, and it's both end up working out fine if you stay consistent, but it's pretty relaxing. It's kind of nice to have somebody that wants to learn what you're teaching. So I'm sure
Yeah.
that was a joy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Did that
Yeah, I've
make you
taught cops
that make you a
before in an
favorite,
immediate
or-
action medical class. They don't want to be there and know what you're teaching.
That's
Like
right.
their department made them be there. It's like there's a total difference in
Yes.
people who want what you have to offer and those who are being forced to take in what you have to offer. So
For sure. Did that make you a favorite?
oh yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah.
My sister, like nobody realizes, like my sister was the rebel. She
Oh,
was
yeah.
the one that dressed differently and
The
like
quiet ones always
yeah.
are the scary ones.
Like, but I've always been super close with my parents, and like, and don't get me wrong, they treated me like their child and they were my parent, but we've always had a friend relationship as well. Like I felt comfortable going to them with problems and getting their advice. So I don't know if friend is the right word, but we've always been super close to where I accepted their criticisms and complaints and the good stuff as gold. Like
Yeah, I don't know if there's another word that kids understand really well. So that's the one that I use with mine. And a lot of people with parent philosophies that are different, that's fine. They've got their kids, I've got mine. Like it's
mm-hmm.
but it's really important to me that um my wife leads our family, but it's really important that we develop the kind of culture that our kids feel like they want to come home and they want to talk to us as adults. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like people these days are like quoting Jordan Peterson all over the place. And, some of it's great, some whatever. But one thing that really resonates with me is raising kids that you like or that you want to be around. Like, don't let your kids be people that you don't want to hang out with. And on the flip
Right.
side, like I want to kind of make sure our kids know why we're teaching them what we're teaching them so that they want to take it in and they want to be able to communicate with us. So I don't know. It's really refreshing to hear the way
Well,
you
I
grew
think
up.
that's the trick though, is that you treat your kids like they are smart enough and responsible enough to receive the information you're giving them. And that was something that stood out. Like when I was growing up, the reason I wanted to be around my dad and his friends was because they didn't treat me like some little kid that needed to go sit down and be quiet.
That's right.
Like when I asked a question, I got legitimate explanations for it, age appropriate, but legitimate explanations. And that's like, I got a great blueprint for parenting my kids out of my parents. So.
Sure. It's a very different dynamic, but it's similar in a lot of ways. When my oldest daughter was Ella, when she was kind of socializing in her earliest times, toddler times on, I was Laura and we were starting our first church, and almost all, for whatever reason, different people are attracted to different things, right? At that particular time, it was almost all like young single adults, like it was almost all young professional people, that are just, so there were no other kids. So like when Ella would talk about her friends, they were all like 20 somethings. I was like 10 years older than most of the people that I was working with, which is kind of normal. And she's like talking like a little adult. And I thought that was awesome. But there were some times when you would go, how the South is, and I love the South, but you go to some other more formal environments with older people, and she's wanting to come to the adult table and have adult conversations, and they're like, get your kid in place kind of look. And I'm like, my kid is in their place. She's speaking very respectfully, and she's waiting her turn to talk in this thing. So it's just a weird dynamic. And like you said, people have different parenting styles, but I totally buy into the way you're talking. I think that's the way the next generation is going to have their head screwed on straight. And unlike some others, I have some hope in the next generation.
I do too. I really do. I've seen changes in a lot of the kids that come around, like my niece and nephew's age. Yeah. And it, I have hope.
Yeah.
I do. Like, it's almost like they realize like all of these things can't be true at the same time. So they're starting to question it more.
Right. Some of these things are not like the others.
Right.
So let's see here. I'm trying to think of what people would find interesting. And I'm just going to go with what I find interesting. How many jobs do you have right now?
Right now, my job is tactical response. I handle the marketing.
Yeah.
And I'm helping run the front until Heather takes that over. Like she come back and it's going to be me, her, and Joey running the company moving forward. James said, he told me today, he was just like, I'm ready to retire and just enjoy some time. Cause he's always been just a work.
For sure.
And that's what, like, I had to like shooting to get to spend time with my dad because that's what he wanted to do. So I was like, I want to do whatever gives me the opportunity to spend more time with him. And luckily I loved it. But he's ready to retire. So I'm the mean one here. Like I'm the one that they call if they need something handled or taken care of.
You smile too much to be the mean one, but I think I know what you mean. You're gonna crack the whip if it needs cracked.
Yeah, the one that has to be the bad guy if needed.
Okay.
So.
Well, I'll stay on the right side of it. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So just, I don't mean this in a disrespectful way at all, but just tactical response, because I know you've done a lot of different things, just like most of us have. I call it being a hustler. You know, you got your hustle and you got your side hustle, and sometimes your side hustle, you know, not like it's going. And you've certainly done that. Medical is one of, like, you were.
I was a nurse.
Right? What else have you, like, let's build your resume out a little bit. What all have you done?
So I have worked tactical response off and on since high school. Right. I did some customer service, some admin, and I started teaching the immediate action medical class when I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
And then
those videos are awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, like the first one, and then I think it's been how many times has it been redone? Just once?
I think once or twice.
Once or twice. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, you're good. I have been a waitress. Yeah. I have worked at a pizza place.
Nice.
Yeah, I have worked in customer service, a lot of different places, like answering phones, stuff like that.
Right.
I worked at a factory for a little while.
Yes.
And that, my dad, he was like, I'm really glad you had that experience. Now, if you want, you can come back and work here so that you don't have to work at a factory. So that was probably the most difficult, like physically demanding and difficult job, because you're up on your feet for 12 to 16 hours a day, running a hot press in the middle of the summer in in a building that doesn't have adequate air conditioning. So that was probably the most miserable job. And then I took a hiatus from working whenever I started having children.
I was wondering if the mom thing was going to enter the list.
Well, I did a lot of things before becoming a mom. Like I mentioned it on the podcast, like the most like stick with you piece of advice that I'd ever gotten from my parents was the only, again, freedom. The only true freedom you ever have in your life is from the time you graduate high school until you have children. Mm-hmm. So I did a lot of living from 18 to 24. And I got pregnant with Gage when I was 24 and took, like I said, took some time off to be a mom. And when we moved back to Tennessee, went to nursing school, got out. I was a correctional nurse for a couple of years. Crazy. And then I did home health nursing part-time and worked here part-time. And then in November of 2021, I started here full-time. And stop the nursing stuff.
Have you liked that transition?
I miss jail nursing.
Do you?
I do.
You like You like the crazy then a little bit. Like
I thrive in chaos, especially when I can handle, like, I know what to do with the chaos.
You like to solve problems.
Yes. And the jail nursing, it gave me a way to help people that most people wouldn't think twice about helping, because it was in a correctional setting. And I got to be the kind of nurse that I wanted to be. Like, every nurse dreams of being able to say, like, you haven't like drank a glass of water in a month and you're complaining of back pain, just go drink more water. Well, I got to do that. I got to be that nurse. And it was and then actually help the people who needed help. Like, when I worked there, they would announce when I was doing sick calls, and then the guys would trade out. Like, man, I was just trying to get some ibuprofen. You really need something done, so you go see Miss Kayla, and I'll wait until one of the other nurses that just, okay, whatever. Yeah. So I was the water and exercise nurse. Sure. And I got to make a bigger difference in a lot more lives, because it wasn't just about the medical aspect. Yeah. I think that, like, your baseline is respecting people.
Yes.
And then if they do something to lose that, that's fine. But my baseline is everybody gets respect when I first meet them, even criminals in a correctional facility.
No matter where you meet them.
No,
you don't know anything about them until they tell you something about themselves, right? Yeah, that's really good.
I think I made more of a difference just having that mentality than I did as a nurse, like doing the nursing thing. I'm sorry, we've got fly.
That's okay. I think it's kind of like people are not going to be bored. You know, they can play.
Right? I'm like, oh, she's ninjing.
Don't go ninja. Nobody don't be ninja. Right. No, I think if somebody wants to come behind us and play a drinking game, and just every time Kayla waves, you take a shot, then you guys will have a great time.
Don't do that. That's how you die.
I'm not recommending it. I'm just saying. So where do you think you developed that idea of I'm going to not assume anything about people. I'm going to start from ground zero whenever I meet somebody. Where did that come from? And
my dad.
You think so?
I do. Because he was a police officer when I was growing up, and he was like a good one. And it was one of those things, like, we were taught, like, don't write a check that your ass can't cash. Yeah. And just basic human decency. I watched
I'm such a nerd. I'm in my mind trying to figure out, if you really had to sign a check with your rear end, how would you do that? Could you clench it? I'm sorry. It's such a weird thought. Like,
I think it's like, don't write a check with your mouth. I don't know the whole saying. Yeah. So that, like, if you've got to be able to take responsibility for everything you say and do. Right. And like, second, I watched how he treated people, and he, especially in his line of work, he come across people that society in general deems less desirable, and he still treated them with respect and dignity.
Sure. Yeah. My grandfather, who had a real strong impact on my life, always used the phrase, I don't care if it's the janitor or the CEO, you treat them the same way. And then he'd kind of smirk and be like, janitor's probably a better dude anyway. Kind of thing. But, I'm always referencing back to Bible truth. And the idea there is, don't be a respecter of persons. Like don't think, and that doesn't mean don't respect them. It just means don't have this fear of man thing where you're like, we would call it celebrity culture now, where you treat somebody differently because you see people around them treating them with something, whether they earned it or not. Just start from ground zero, like you're saying, with everybody you meet, and give everybody respect, see them with innate value, and go from there. And I think people will teach you how to treat them. And it's all, even if they're bad people, there's still some room for compassion if they're not actively being
Right.
harmful or trying to hurt you, you know. So, and a lot of people that have done some bad things are not bad people, in my opinion, you know. So,
But I would tell them, like, when they would come into the office for a sick call, you could see, like, some of them just were, you could see the shame radiating off
yeah,
of them.
that's
And
shame.
not only is it probably one of the worst days of their lives,
Yeah,
but the only thing separating me from them was a couple bad decisions and a hell of a lot of luck.
sure.
Like, it, I don't, people think of jail as a place where you only go if you're bad. And that's just not how our justice system works.
No, it's
Like,
not.
working there completely changed my opinion of the justice system in general.
Sure.
But like, it's not just bad people in there.
No.
So
I think of a lot of things that I did growing up that were considered just boys being boys.
Mhm.
And then I consider some of the people that I have worked with from different socioeconomic, different settings, you know, particularly inner city settings. And a lot of them did very similar things that I did, but the law got called immediately. And
Yeah.
it was in the system, and that graduates. You learn how to see yourself, you learn where to go with that, and you learn how to do worse things, you know, like, so anyway, it's been you're right, our system, you don't, well, it's like this. Think about how many people right now, well, we'll bottom line it. How much do you trust our government?
Like, none. None. That's a big goose egg.
So because I think sometimes we get it all twisted, right? Like, people for the most part in our culture would try to be supportive of law enforcement. You know, we would try to be supportive, but we also have to realize that this is an extension of the government. You know, there are certainly good police officers, and
Right.
but we have a system situation, and you know, and you can't get those things twisted. You know, anyway, just because somebody's a postman doesn't mean they're a bad person, but you know,
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
we'll leave it there. So, and I don't normally write down questions, but I was sitting there for those 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, here are all the questions I'm thinking of. So I'm going to look down and kind of make sure I don't lose one of them. So we talked about how many jobs you've had. What do you, and I'm sure there are things you're leaving out. I guess my thought is, I perceive you as a hardworking person. I know we haven't been around each other a lot, and doing a lot of different things that people might not see and they might not recognize. You're a hustler for sure. When I talk to your dad, I call him a baller always. So I'm gonna call you a hustler if that's okay with you. I mean it respectfully. And I think you'll notice over time, if you spend time around Kayla, she's always getting into something and doing something. And I've noticed that already, and I expect to see it more. So what do you think folks would be surprised to find out about you? What do you think folks would be like, she's into that? Or she's like, what do you think would surprise people for them to discover about you?
Like, how cheesy I actually am.
Cheesy.
Like, I love cheesy movies.
Okay.
I I'm so cheesy.
What do you
My
mean?
kids already, they're like,
cheese? What kind of cheese do you like?
like the stuff, like, I'm a big dork. Like, I've been told, like, I come across as like self-confident and
Oh,
all of these other things, but I'm actually like the butt of most of my own jokes.
sure.
So that's what I mean by cheesy. Like, I handle everything with humor, and that's not surprising. Like, I handle everything with humor. But it's all like, that's my only coping mechanism.
Sure. But I think it's sincere too. And I think people perceive a willingness to be self-deprecating as strength, and they're right to perceive it that way.
Mhm.
You know, like, it's if somebody feels like they can make a joke of themselves, there is a kind of confidence that's behind that. it could be covering something, but I don't think that's the case with you. I mean, you're right, you're coping, but you are a strong person. Yeah, I hear you. So you think people would be surprised? Like, what would you like? Give an example of some cheese that people would be like, she did what? She watched what? She likes what?
I love trash TV.
Yes,
like,
on,
I love
girl.
it. I love trash TV. Like, my mom, she got me into some of it, but those like the island dating shows or whatever, like Married at First Sight, like totally into all that stuff.
Yes. Put your mind, like, you don't have to think about it. Just put it in neutral kind of, right? Like, and you can just, so Laura, my wife, there's this show. What is it? What is that show called? It's the one where they turn on all the lights. Like when people, like, they're trying to guess who they're supposed to, I don't know what it's called, but they're supposed to.
Oh, is that the one like Love is Blind?
No. There's like, they're trying to guess, they're all there and they've been matched with somebody, but they don't know who they've matched with. So they go into this room and they're trying to like, they're like, I'm for sure it's this person because I'm attracted to this person.
That made me Love Island.
it might be. It's totally trashy. Like, it's,
yeah.
But then they pair up each time, and then how many lights come on, right? It's like they like beams of light going up in this, and they get so many. Anyway, so Laura like totally nerds out with it. She's like she has like it graphs out where she's like, they could figure it out if they would just, like, do it like Sudoku, kind of like elimination. She's like got the whole, she's not even interested in what's happening between the people. She's just figuring out the puzzle, which is hilarious. Maybe I don't know. It's hilarious. So that's great. That's great. I think everybody needs to turn their brain off every once in a while. And TV, I don't know that it's off, but you know what I mean. So.
And then a real quick, another misconception is that because I work here, I enjoy talking about guns.
You think so? You think people assume that?
Oh, I know so. Especially dudes, because they're like, oh my God, it's a chick that likes guns. No, I like shooting guns. I don't like talking about them. I don't know the latest gizmoing gadget.
So that's like, there's stages of this, right? And when you're early on in stages, I think the gear and the gadgets really attract you. And there's actually a study about men and women. I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday. And it's overgeneralizing, but there's a bunch of research into like men being attracted to like objects and tools and things, and women in general being more attracted to relationships and people, and more like conversational kind of elements,
like ideas,
right?
like tangible versus abstract.
Right. So if you're in our culture, if you're trying to get a guy into training, you point out that he doesn't know as much about the gear as he thinks he does, and he needs to train with it to actually understand it, right? Because he's obsessed with the object. Right.
But coming from me, that's emasculation.
Right. But if you're trying to get a woman into it, like you talk about family and like kids and whatever in general, like overgeneralizing, but most of the time you're going to get more traction talking about the relationship side, and ultimately both sides need to go into the other territory, because at some point a woman's going to need to care about the gear a little bit, not a lot, but she's going to have to like figure out what works for her. And a man is going to have to like get past the gear and get to the purpose of why we're doing this anyway. And arguably the woman's a little ahead of the pack from the beginning, but they both have to kind of like cross pollinate. Anyway, we were having this barbecue conversation yesterday with some folks coming over, because the couple that came over both train, and the woman trains way more than my wife. And so I was like, hey, listen, see, like my wife's a good shooter. She's not a good tactician, and that's okay. She's at the spot that she's at. And I have very much learned that she's going to do what she wants to do. when she wants to do it.
Yes,
and,
yes.
And she's a lot farther along than a lot of people. So anyway, she's got a lot of mindset just naturally because she's a strong person and a intelligent person, and she's not a dramatic person. So she's ahead of the game already. Anyway, didn't mean to ramble there. So, any other cheese things before we move on to the next question?
Like I belt out at the top of my lungs, like rapping the songs and stuff when they come on the radio. Rap? And I've been caught singing it. Yes. Singing and dancing, rapping in the car by people that I know. Like I've gotten a picture of me doing it.
Okay. Old rap or new rap?
All
rap.
All
mumble
of it.
Rap? You like mumble rap?
I'm
not throwing shade. I'm just asking.
Like I can't sing along and keep up with it.
Right.
I like stuff that I can do it with them, and I'm not that good. Like I'm a klutz with my body and my words. I'm constantly tripping over myself, my own 2 feet, and the words that I'm trying to say. So the mumble rap isn't as good for me.
If it has a really good beat, I could still get into it, but I wish that I knew what he was saying, you know. And
right?
I'll find myself actually like going to like look up the lyrics. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, you know. But anyway, for the most part, I think across all musical genres, I'm relatively stuck in the 90s. I can appreciate new stuff, but if it's really like something that hits the core, it's from a certain era. I don't know why, but it's from a certain time in my life. You know, it feels like if I'm going to roll down the windows, it's just there. There's new stuff that I dig, but 90s. What season is it, or you like it from all times? Do you like country?
I can enjoy just about. Sorry, pesky flies again. I can enjoy just about any style of music.
Okay.
Except the Eagles and the Beastie Boys.
Okay. Eagles are overappreciated.
The Eagles, when I was a waitress, the owner of the restaurant I worked at played one Eagles CD on repeat the entire year and a half I worked there. So I like, no.
What about the Beastie Boys? Why do you hate on them?
My sister got to pick music. Like we got to take turns on vacations picking music, and I'm probably exaggerating this because I was a kid and it felt like forever, but I was like, that's all we listened to from Tennessee to South Carolina was the Beastie Boys, and I was just over it.
All right, go Heather. I can get down with some Beastie Boys. They're in the right timeline there. Like, again, forget about their messaging and just like get with the spirit of the music, and I can get into it. So let's see here. So is it fair to say in the tactical response world, you are at least initially a medical expert? Like that was your entry to this, or is that too myopic to like?
That is my focus now. Like back when I was teaching the immediate action medical, I was also helping out a lot on the range with fighting pistol and the fight. Because I started taking classes, like professional training classes, when I was 8 or 9 years old. Mm-hmm. And the medical stuff didn't come along until I was a teenager. Right. So I got into it because of the guns, but I found my passion with the medical, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And that's kind of consistent with the way I was thinking about this. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to say you're picking medical as your specialty. Is that okay? Okay.
Yes.
So like that's like so clearly you've done all the training and have competency in all the different categories. I'm sure you're proficient across the board. But I wonder which areas of all the classes other than medical that you guys offer, which kind of topics do you gravitate towards, and which ones are you kind of like, oh, I got to do this again? Like we all like some things, some kinds of training, and some kinds of training are like, I know it's important and I'm going to do it, but it's kind of eating your Brussels sprouts. Like which training do you feel really good at, really like you enjoy?
I love any of our force on force stuff. Okay. The active shooter, the force on force, the fight continues. Like that, if I didn't have medical, like that would be my bread and butter. because when you're instructing in those classes, you kind of work as a therapist at the end of it. And I'm really good at talking to people and relating to people. So I guess that would be my other favorite.
Okay.
And I don't even dabble in long range or distance stuff because it feels like a lot of math. And while I used to be good at math, like having kids wiped that part of my brain. So I'm like, the other day we are like, what's 10% of 5,000? I'm like, somebody's going to have to math that for me because I can't even do something that simple in my head right now.
Sure. That's fair. That's fair. So as a student, I mean, you talked about teaching. As a student, is that also true with the scenario-based stuff? If you're going to go take a class, you like scenario classes?
I gravitate towards the force on force and more medical stuff. And if they don't
problem solving thing that you're
yes, if they don't mention mindset, like I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Okay.
And this is going to sound really weird, especially coming from me, because I enjoy firearms training classes. But if you told me that I had to pick between the lecture portion of classes and the shooting portion of classes, I would pick the lecture portion every time because I already know how to shoot, but I might not know what the information they're giving me is.
No, I don't think that's weird at all. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. What have you been in? What lecture, what class have you been in recently? Maybe it's a podcast that you're listening to where you had one of those aha moments where you're like, that made me think. That challenge, like I need to put that piece of the puzzle into my equation. Have you anything that comes to mind?
It wasn't a class.
Okay.
It was working in business stuff, and Nate Garrison was telling me about a budgeting app.
Yeah.
And that has my sister will be the person in charge of finances here. Again, when I had kids, like my math brain got sick or something. And that's the thing, like I want to get better at. And something that like the app he was talking about was tracking your money in real time instead of budgeting for future money. Like you only get to budget the money that you have. And I know that it's not firearms related, but it was like a missing tile on my board of things. So that to make me a more responsible parent and business runner.
Maybe you'll call it a stretch, but I think that might be mindset related anyway. Like I think working with, like, think about immediate action medical, right? So you're in a scenario that you create as a student. I'm in a scenario that you as a teacher have created, and I'm trying to put together the pieces to have this person not bleed out in front of me, right? And these are the things that I have, and I have to work with what's there. I can't work with what's not there if I don't have time to go get something and bring it here, which is very much the same as the budget kind of thing, right? So you have to work with what's in your hand, what you brought with you, what you're prepared to use. I mean, I think that's a mindset thing. I think that makes total sense.
And it was recognizing a weakness.
Okay, cool.
Because until he said, like, you're budgeting for money you don't even have yet, I'm like, what? Oh my God, I am. And when, like, because you count on your check coming in on time and this thing and that thing. But by budgeting the money that you have, it also will help reduce stress because then you're only focusing on the current problems, not 6 months from now.
That's right. Right. And
so
you're also living more and more, you'll find, I think, within your means, because you're dealing with the immediate in a healthier way. And sometimes you can spend things when you're kind of living in the future. You can spend things before they get to you. The things that you didn't know were going to come up in the present are not accounted for. Like my chainsaw this morning. I wasn't planning on buying another chainsaw, but that's in the immediate. If I had spent, anyway, it's a different conversation. So you kind of, if I heard you right, you say scenario-based stuff, you gravitate towards long-range mathy stuff. You kind of avoid like the plague. Fair enough?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. Very good. That long-range class that you guys just held, they didn't make it super mathy, and it was like, you might not be into it, but I think if Trey does that again there, I think you might like it. Like it was really cool. It was really cool. What's core to who you are? Maybe another way of saying this is your core identity. How do you want people to know you? How do you want to be known? Like, who are you?
I want to be known as a person who, and this is the like what I want to instill in my kids as well. I want to be someone who is viewed as kind, but is not going to be walked on. Like one of the first things that I want people to think about me is that I treat others well.
Yeah.
Like I want to, that is, if I could pick anything to be, it would be kind.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
And then of course, like we've talked about freedom a lot. So I think that owning your, I would say own your shit. And I'm sorry for the profane. I'm profane too.
Don't be sorry. Well,
but owning your stuff, like when I worked at the jail, I made a med error, and instantly I called my boss. I was like, "Hey, I just did this thing that it's a mistake. I messed up." And she was like, "Okay, come here." So anytime anything happened, even if it was something that I was scared to admit, my philosophy was that if you take responsibility for it and you own it, that when you don't do something that was messed up, that they'll believe you.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I can't remember who the title was. It might have been Jocko Willenick, or one of these like SEAL guys. I get them all mixed up. I listen to a lot of books now that audiobooks have become. I always did, but even when there were tapes from the library. But now that there are apps like Audible, I'm able to listen to stuff all the time. So there was a book called Extreme Ownership that came out a couple years ago.
Yep,
it was actually really, really good. Like it's a lot of those things are kind of like, yeah, okay. Not very much original thought here, but this one really was worth listening to or reading, and that resonates a lot. Owning your shit is a very valuable thing, and the world would be a lot better place if people did. You know, if people took ownership for what they've done, both good and bad, and just said, "Hey, this is where we are. Let's do it." You know, that's really cool. So. Kind and taking personal ownership, those are
I because it's like the first thing that pops into my head is like, who is Kayla? I'm a mom and I'm a nurse. Like sure. That's how I view myself. But I think like when people ask that question, they're wanting to know your core, like your heart,
your values. Yeah.
And like I have like the golden rule from kindergarten.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of like you treat people how you want to be treated. And I love being known as tough.
Yeah.
Because then that lets people know like, yes, she'll be really nice to you, but don't take advantage of that.
Right.
So I think it helps you set healthy boundaries.
Do you find that that's taken advantage of very often?
Oh yeah. Not like people try.
Sure.
Like it's pretty consistent that people try to take advantage of that, and not just in this like here, but in general. Like when
perceive kindness as weakness far more often than they ought to. You know. Yeah, if you're nice to somebody, they're more likely to try to hustle you or try to like get over on you. But yeah, keep going. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, you're fine. And then a good sense of humor.
Yeah.
Like that, because if you don't have that, like then where's your enjoyment in life?
Yeah.
And again, like going back to the freedom thing, it's very important to me to feel like I'm in control of my own decisions.
Yes.
And so I extend responsibilities to my children so that even at 2, 6, and 7, they have some control over how their lives are being run.
I think that's so important. And I don't like you talked about your parents doing this, but it's kind of like a graduated fencing, right? Like, here's all the freedom that you have within this yard. Well, we're moving your yard to this town. You're moving this, like, you're kind of like, you're expanding the borders of that. And as long as they're not being stupid within the boundaries, you keep the borders where they're at, and kind of, you want to give them as much freedom as possible. I think that makes total sense.
My dad, he says, like, you are raising your children to leave you one day.
That's right.
So you can either protect them from the world, which stops as soon as they're 18, and then what do they have? Or you can prepare them for it. That's right. So and just a random little, I guess this is something else people wouldn't expect. I give my kids room to tell me no. Okay. And we do it within boundaries, like within a certain set of rules. So if I say, hey, Emmeline, go clean your room, she has to go clean her room. If I say, hey, Emmeline, do you mind going and cleaning your room up for me, please? And she says no, then I'm like, okay, we'll try again later.
That's different because of the way you framed it, right? You didn't give her directive, right?
So when I'm asking a question, they get to say no. If I'm giving an order, then they have to listen.
I think that makes total sense.
Because if your kids can't tell the most authoritative person in their life no, how do you ever expect them to stand up against against authority figures doing the wrong thing?
We'll go back to your I think you guys didn't you just do a debrief of the recent school shooting thing, right? Mm-hmm. So like what are your kids going to do when they're told to stay in place, when you told them get out of there, like your dad told you, and like I told my kids before I knew your dad told like that's just makes sense, right? So we had those conversations years ago and continue to have them, and unfortunately have them every time that like these things pop off. Yeah, what do you expect? Because even this last time when I talked to my kids, it had been a while since we'd had that conversation, and my oldest was like, we get out of there. But the others were like, well, if the teacher's wait a second, like, and it's like, no. And so you need that. Anyway, you're doing it right. So you talked about like, so I pray these things over my kids. You talked about that toughness and that tenderness thing. And for a long time, I prayed almost every night, Lord, make my kids tough and tender, tough enough to deal with all the difficulties in the world, tender enough to show the world compassion, just make them those kind people, but don't make them pushovers. Don't make them, and I want them to find their own values, what they want. But in general, the Christian community, and forgive me for going back to this, but it's kind of my world. They sometimes do a really poor job of what you just talked about, and there are exceptions to this, but the idea of the protecting, the helicopter parenting, the greenhouse philosophy of parenting, like where you're like, we're going to keep all the bad things and only give our kids the water and the sunlight. And when they're going to grow real strong and healthy, not without resistance. Nothing grows strong and healthy in a false, fake environment. Like, you need to be dealing with difficulty along the way if you're really going to, engage with anything in a way down the road. So thanks for doing it. If you're a Christian person out there watching this, listen to what my sister Kayla has to say. She's spitting the truth, and I'm shouting amen, like old school church style. So
well, the whole turn the other cheek thing, like people will quote parts of the Bible to to make themselves feel better, like, hey, this right here, this thing. And then like when they say things like that, I'm like, well, Jesus also was flipping tables and like lashing at people.
He was,
Like while pacifism is the general goal, it's to be peaceful, not pacifist. Like, so you want peace, but to be capable of, or to get peace, you have to be capable of violence, and you have to be capable of doing things that don't feel like something you would think that would need to happen.
Sure. There's a reason why the Beatitudes, when Jesus is teaching, is peacemakers.
Yes.
Like, making peace is not just hey, we're allowing peace to happen. Like
No.
no, like we're assuming there's chaos, and we're engaging the chaos to make peace where there was disorder. Like that,
Right.
that means there's strong direction happening
Yeah.
here.
There is action happening to make that peace.
That's right. There's lots of fake, like every generation in most society take historical figures, and Jesus no exception to this. They take historical figures and they kind of remake them in their own image. They kind of like reinterpret them. It's revisionist history. Jesus was not a mamby-pamby person. Like there's no way you can read what actually happened and see this person as like masculinity is a problem. Like he was a prototype for masculinity that protects and provides and serves with a lot of strength. You know, here's a guy being killed, and in the middle of that saying, hey bro, take care of my mom, you know, make sure she's being taken care of to his, you know, dying breath. He's not like, oh, they got me, I'm so self-absorbed, you know, like every single step was strength. So anyway, so that's not the point of this conversation though. So do you feel called, but it does kind of go into, do you feel called to anything? I think you touched on, you gravitate towards the medical thing, but when you hear that word calling, do you feel called to anything in your life?
I feel called to help people.
Okay.
And that, I think that's why the transition to tactical response from nursing was easy, because I feel like that's what we do here. Like I have a servant's heart.
Okay.
And I want to serve my community. I want to serve my family. Like, so that is my calling, is to put myself into any position to where I am helping others improve any dynamic of their life.
What part of that calling that you feel of helping others feels heavy to you, and what part of it feels fulfilling or satisfying to you?
I think the part that feels heavy is that there's so much that still, like, I don't feel like I can do it enough.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart whenever I see people in need and I can't do anything about it. Just because maybe at the time I'm not financially able, or I don't have the time to give them, or any one thing that would put a block on me being able to help them. And the part that feels fulfilling is that, like, I have a lot of people that reach out to me whenever they've got stuff going on, and to know that they trust me enough to be vulnerable with me and tell me that they need help.
Somebody is so drunk by now, I'm telling you.
the drought that we've had, and we're under like a severe heat advisory. Like they're coming through, and we've had people opening and closing the doors with class all day. So it's been rough. But no, that is the most fulfilling part, to know that people trust me enough to be vulnerable with me. That's
really good. Can we kind of end with using one of your tactical responses acrostics and using it in a little different way? Like, you know, the FAST, fight, assess, scan, top off, right? We're not giving away your training. You got to go take the class. So take it outside of fighting pistol, take it outside of that realm, and just like your own worldview, the way you're seeing life right now. So like, what in your life feels like a fight right now? Like if you hear fight, what are you naturally oriented towards right now? You're like, I'm ready to go to war with this in my world, in my life, my community right now.
Making my dad proud.
Okay.
Like, and excuse me if I get emotional.
You can do what you want.
When I hear fight, I think like pouring all of us into this business to make it succeed so that we can carry on his legacy. Like, he has built something so beautiful here. And that is what I wake up every morning. Like, that is my goal is to make this work and carry it on for him.
I know that you're going to be successful.
Thank you.
I know that. And I know that there are legions of people around this country that feel like I do, that mean it when they say, we will do whatever it takes for that to be the case. But I don't think you're going to need us that much. Like, I think we're going to be able to pour gas on an existing flame. I think you're going to do that. So, but I really appreciate you being willing to share that. So fight, assess. When you're looking around, what is your assessment? And you take it however you like, as you're looking around your world, your life right now, what are you assessing right now?
Balance.
Okay.
Like we were in the middle of a move, and my sister got COVID. So she was out. Shelton got COVID. So he was out. So my assessment is like prioritizing things and balancing them. It's a fly.
There's a fly stuck in your microphone. It's hilarious. It sounds like a whoopee cushion right now.
I think I got it out.
Okay, cool. Okay, so scan. I think you hear where we're going. So like, if you like do your scan of your situation, what do you want to talk about?
Scanning is picturing a year from now.
Okay.
And like James came in the other day and he told me and Heather, he was just like, you've made it through a month with the three of you being the ones running this company. Now you got to make it through a year. And if you can make it through a year, then you just repeat that year. And so we're scanning for issues to come up to make it to the 1 year mark so that we can just put that on repeat.
Are there any needs that and I'm not asking you to give away anything that you're not, but are there any needs that you're seeing already with that scan that you're like, okay, we've got to grow in these areas. We could use some assistance, some help in these areas. Like any things that you feel like between this month into this year that you're like, okay, we need our community to step up in these ways.
I would like to host more instructors here in Camden. I think that it helps everyone involved whenever we host other people, because our instructors get to train with them. And it brings our people to them, their people to us. So that's something that I'm really focusing on with the marketing aspect of things, is trying to get more instructors to Camden to put on classes. And then for me personally, just organizational things. Like, I am the hot mess express. It's always been who I am. I like to use the word spontaneous, but my husband doesn't see it as spontaneity when it's like we're forced into it because I just didn't make plans. But it also works with the business too. So I'm trying to become more organized and just get a better understanding of, like, we're at the point now where we finally know what we didn't know. Good.
That's a huge discovery. It's
so
really
we're figuring these things out. And like I said, we're about a month into this, where it's the three of us primarily making decisions. And it's great because we still have our dad and we can go get his input, but he's like, pretend that I'm just the coach for this team and you guys are the players. Like, come to me if you need advice, but like you guys run this. It's yours to do with now. Right. So just figuring out, like, organizing it into small changes that we can make happen so that we're consistently getting positive feedback from meeting our goals.
Yeah, good. Okay, top off.
Top off is,
what do you remember? Like you need to refuel or
that's the topping off is just remembering to like include myself in that, helping people, like make sure that I'm taking care of myself enough.
What does that look like for you?
For me, that looks like getting to sleep in.
Okay, good.
So
when's the last time you did that?
It's been a couple of months now.
Okay.
because we've been working like 6 days a week minimum. Some days it's 7.
Sure.
I've had, like I said, I had the paint party at the house.
Yeah.
And then I had the big group of people over this weekend, and I'm like, I can save the sleep. Like my soul needs this too. But so sleeping in, and then surrounding myself with people who feed into me like I feed into them.
That's good.
And like in particular, the group from Kentucky that come down and help me paint my house, like Bev and Jade have taken care of my kids this weekend like they're their own.
Good.
And then Sam and JT, their husbands, they babysat my kids for me Friday while I worked to give my mom a break because she's getting over COVID as well.
Oh, bless
So
you.
yeah, she wasn't feeling great still. She was only at about 75%. So they watched the kids and they poured into me like I pour into people.
Good.
So having that tribe that we talked about, that is my top offs, like sleeping in and having people that pour into me as well.
It's really important when you're forgive the language, you might call it something else, but when you're a healer kind of person, you can fail to triage. You tell moms all the time, like, hey, you don't take care of yourself, this baby is going to eventually really suffer, but you need to be healthy for you too. Like, it's not
the problem with that though is like you can't pour from an empty cup mentality.
That's what I mean.
Is, well, then who's gonna pour?
Oh, I know.
And that's why you have to have that.
Right. No, I
that community or that tribe of people to help.
But there also has to be a time when if I don't pour, it might not happen. And here's the problem. And when you're building communities, sometimes people are so used to you doing it, even when you're so depleted you shouldn't be, that you have to let there be a hole for someone else to step up. And it sucks. I hate this in developing team cultures, but every once in a while you have to let people feel, oh, he always does that, or she always does that. I better make sure, like, because again, you said it yourself, we're learning what we didn't know. So sometimes people are so used to somebody doing that so consistently that they don't know all that you're doing. Or you can advocate, you can speak up, but sometimes people don't hear you until you just like, okay, I'm going to sleep in this morning. It's been 5 months, So I know what you're saying, but you can't say, like you said it again earlier too, with you can't do everything for everybody. You can steward the person that you cross paths with. You can do something for the person you're meeting right there. But if you take the weight of the world on your shoulders, I mean, you're just going to die early, and
I think of that, like with everybody else, I get it. Like you can't pour from an empty cup. So I'm pretty good at like setting boundaries and stuff now, but it's within my own household, like the mom duties. And it's one of those things like, well, when the kids are hungry, it doesn't matter how tired I am, how much I've put into things. Like me and their dad work opposite shifts.
No, I hear
that. So it's like, and that's where I'm like, hold up, time out. So for moms, unless you're offering assistance, like it's not even a great argument, but for life in general.
Yeah, no, I think for moms and dads, there are core needs. Like your kids are another level.
Right.
They're called dependents for a reason, right? So like we have our family, but then we have our family.
Yes.
Right? Like, and I hear you. I mean, in general, in the broader community sense,
yes,
you have to receive, and you have to be okay with your need is going to exist tomorrow too.
And you have to be willing to accept help from people.
That's really hard. Because when you're used to giving, it's hard to learn to get, even when somebody's offered, sometimes it's I don't know. I think we're probably similar in this way. Like, I don't know, but I spend a lot of time on the serving side, and I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. I don't know that I want to feel needed. I just want to help. Like, I don't really care if anybody knows it. But that if you're not really careful, will get to a bad place, like where it's like, holy cow. So I speak from experience. I'm not a mom, but I speak from experience.
You're a parent. You are
like,
a parent. Like,
like,
I'm sure my husband feels the same way. Like, well, who's gonna pour it for me? But no, I agree, and I think that for me, like being surrounded by other people who their primary purpose is to serve, it helps balance me out, because then they don't take no for an answer from me.
Yes.
So
that's all I'm trying to push. I'm just pushing. Do refuel. I promise your community and your kids, everybody will be a better thing.
Have a tribe that
yes. And if you're immediately around Kayla, listen to this message and give her some support, yo. Okay, so refuel, and I know you're strong and you're like, so top off, what do we got it all the way through. Scan, top off. We're all
the rest of the T's, talk, communicate. It's like talk, treat. So
they can keep going. Yeah. So I really, I mean, you can talk about any of those if you want, but I really appreciate your time. What are the things that I didn't ask that I should have asked that you really wanted to talk about?
I don't think that you left anything important out. Like that, I think that the question, like hitting the last two, like, what do you think of at Fight Now? Mm-hmm. And then the rest of them, the rest of the T's, like the talk, treat, and all of those, I think they're just as important to speak about. Like, so for talking, one of the things that has brought me the most comfort, and my family in general, my sister, my mom, my Joey, my husband, Joey, my brother-in-law, my husband, Alex, like all of us comfort is that like we are not grieving these problems alone. And I had somebody apologize to me for getting upset when discussing my dad. Like that they were like, I shouldn't be upset with you about this. Like you're losing something more. And I told them, like, this isn't my grief alone. And it is comforting to know that other people feel the same sense of loss as me. One of the things, like, no matter if it's law or not, I always pull over for a funeral, for the whole funeral procession. And the reason that I do that is because when I've lost people before, that's when I cry the hardest, is on the way from the funeral home to the gravesite, because it feels like the whole world is still going and you just need that pause. Yeah. And by pulling over and showing them respect, it gives them that pause. Yes. It lets them know that you're recognizing that their world is upside down right now. And for me, I feel like all of these people who are are grieving the diagnosis and all of like this process with us, like it keeps me from feeling like I'm the only one whose world is upside down. And you can feel the pause, like you can feel other people comforting you. And it's like, okay, everybody's experiencing this with me. And it makes you feel a whole lot less alone in it. And then the treat, I have reached out to more than one friend who, like, when I notice that I'm having like a hard day with it, having people that just listen to me, hear me out, and they're treating that internal wound that I have from my dad having ALS. So like recognizing when it's time to reach out and get support, and that like treating yourself too. So
that's really good. Thank you for sharing those things. I appreciate it. Yeah, your dad means the world to us. And I can only imagine what he means to you. So, but he's still with us. And, yep. I am, I'm really excited to see what these moments together as he shares himself with you guys. And I'm really excited to see what the days ahead look like.
Oh yeah.
I know there are some some beautiful moments still to come. I know there's some painful moments too, but there's some beautiful moments to come.
Like it's like a blessing and a curse at the same time, because like we're having to grieve him before he dies, because we know it's coming. So you're already experiencing grief from it, but we get to make every single minute count. And that is probably one of the most beautiful gifts that has come out of this, is that like we are living with intention now.
Yeah.
And it's the intention to make things as good as possible for all of us. Like spend that time together, and the you don't sweat the little stuff when you've got ALS hanging over your head.
Yeah. I'm hesitant to speak because my side of this is so much less than your side of it, but your dad is one of them that I consider a good friend that is going through a real difficult time. And then one of my close, one of the guys I grew up with, he's in Estonia right now, and he had a big cancer tumor, right? So he's also, it's not looking good. He's my age, and it's not looking good. And both of those situations are kind of really bringing to focus like what you're talking about. You've got to make every moment count. And I'm thinking about, I'll give this example. For so many years, I've had a motorcycle, and your dad takes these trips, and he's like, here's the list, bro. Like, and some of them have been the tail of the dragon, which is like not far away.
Right.
And I'm like, well, my schedule and da-da-da-da-da. And I could have like taken an hour drive, and not an hour drive, but I could have been there in a couple hours and then taken a day. It's not a big deal. But you're like, we'll get together then, son. Have a good time then, son. I've got this going on in your life, right? And then you're like, crap. No, I don't know how much time I have.
Right.
So I'm going to say yes. And whatever's going on, forget it, which is the focus we should live with, like if you're not going to waste your life. So I'm like, I sent your dad a message the other day. I'm like, if you're taking any more motorcycle trips, let me know. And he sent me that message, and I'm like, holy cow, this is like a big motorcycle trip. And I'm like, I'm not going to say schedule, I'm like, I'm going to figure it out, daggone it.
Yeah.
So, but it just does, like it brings focus. And I wish that I'd had some of that focus a lot more time. I'm sure all of us feel that way, but you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know. So anyway, don't mean to make it about me, but I totally pick up what you're putting down. It's really important. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for I know we're acquaintances, but thank you for your friendship, Kayla. Over the years, I hope that you more and more will see me as an asset and a friend. I'm here. All you got to do is call. And you don't have to call if you just say it on the interweb and we see it. That's enough too. Anyway, we're really excited to see what you and Joey and Heather and your team do over the next few years. But we have I want to say it publicly, and we have all the confidence in the world that you guys are going to kill it and continue.
Thank you.
Yeah.